The photo showed up on a Tuesday morning. Not sent to me. Not tagged. It was someone else's post. A friend of a friend. That's how I found out my son got married. I was standing at the kitchen counter, stirring my tea. The spoon clinked gently against the ceramic. It was raining. Not heavily, just a soft drizzle. The kind of weather that makes everything feel like a memory. I didn't expect anything when I opened Facebook. I was just scrolling, killing time really. Looking at strangers' pets and recipes I'd never try. Then I saw him. Jason. My son. In a dark gray tuxedo, boutonniere on his lapel. His arm around a woman I had met twice. Her veil was pulled back, and her smile looked rehearsed. Behind them, a garden draped in fairy lights. White chairs, guests leaning in with laughter. The kind of scene you find on a wedding website. Polished, soft-lit, almost unreal. There were roses in the background. A cake, towering with sugar flowers. A caption. The happiest day of our lives. But I wasn't in the photo. I wasn't in the garden. I wasn't even in their thoughts. I didn't cry. Not at first. I clicked the photo open. Zoomed in. Checked each face in the crowd. There was Aunt Rita, holding a glass of champagne. There was his college roommate. There was his father, my ex-husband, with his new wife, arm in arm like they'd raised him alone. But me? I was in my kitchen. Wearing socks with holes. Holding a chipped mug. Watching strangers celebrate the boy I gave birth to. The rain tapped against the window. And my silence tapped louder inside me. 6 months ago, he called me out of the blue. Said they were house hunting. Said they didn't want to wait years. Said the down payment was the hard part. I didn't hesitate. I transferred $18,000 the next morning. No questions asked. Just love. That's what I told myself. This is love. He said thank you. Briefly. And that was it. 2 weeks later, I mailed a small white box to their new address. Inside, wrapped in tissue, was the gold bracelet my grandmother wore to her wedding in 1947. It had been passed down, from her to my mother to me. I never wore it. It sat in a velvet pouch in my drawer. I was saving it. For someone who would wear it with pride. I included a note, handwritten, shaky in places. Welcome to the family. This belonged to women who loved deeply. May it bring strength and softness both. I signed it, Mom. I didn't hear anything back. I assumed they were busy. Or overwhelmed. Or perhaps, not ready for sentimental things. But now, as I stared at this photograph, saw the bracelet glinting on her wrist, I knew. I was a name to them. A resource. A giver. Not a guest. My phone sat silent on the counter. No missed calls. No voicemails. No invitation lost in the mail. They hadn't forgotten. They had chosen not to include me. There's a difference. And that difference settled over me like dust. Quiet, weightless, and everywhere. I reheated the soup I had made the night before. Tomato basil. He used to love it as a boy. I remember how he'd dip his grilled cheese into it and say, "You make the best soup in the world, Mama." I placed the bowl on the table, beside a folded napkin. I sat. Picked up my spoon. Stirred. But I didn't eat. The steam rose, curled in the air, then disappeared. That night I did not cry. But I felt something shift. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even heartbreak. It was emptiness rearranged. Like when you clear out a closet and realize how much space was being taken up. I sat by the window until the rain stopped. The house felt heavier somehow. The hallway was lined with photos of birthdays, graduations, Christmas mornings. All of them, Jason at the center. Smiling. Holding gifts I had wrapped. Wearing shirts I had ironed. I stood in front of one, his high school graduation. I remembered the heat that day. How I had packed extra water bottles, snacks, sunscreen. He hugged me afterwards and said, "I couldn't have done it without you." And maybe that was true once. But people change. Love is not a debt. And motherhood is not a contract. I thought about the 18 years I spent shaping his world. Buying notebooks, kissing fevers, waiting in the car during football practice. I thought about the years after that, sending texts, baking his favorites, never forgetting a birthday. I thought about how I had loved him without asking anything back. But now something had been asked. My silence. And I had given that too without knowing. I washed the dishes slowly that night, wiped down the counters, folded the dish towels, turned off the lights. In the quiet, I opened the drawer beside my bed, pulled out the pouch where the bracelet used to be, felt the emptiness inside. Then I closed it. I crawled into bed, and I slept deeply, deeper than I had in months, because something had shifted. That night, I stopped being someone's mother in the active sense. The one who reminds, rescues, remembers birthdays, sends casseroles, gives second chances. That night, I became something else. Not cold, not bitter, just done. I stopped asking for updates, stopped checking his name on social media, stopped imagining how it would feel to finally be invited. I stopped hoping to be seen, and in doing so, I started seeing myself again. I thought maybe I had imagined it. That glint on her wrist, in the wedding photo, the same curve of gold I had wrapped in velvet and tissue, the same bracelet I hadn't worn in 40 years, because I was waiting, saving it for the woman who'd one day join our family with open arms and open eyes. But memory is cruel when it wants to be. It flickers, doubts itself. So the next morning, I went to my dresser. Not to accuse, not to mourn, just to confirm. The top drawer held the same things it always did. My reading glasses, an old lavender sachet, a postcard from Paris I'd never mailed. But the velvet pouch was missing. The empty envelope from the jewelry cleaner was still there, though. I ran my fingers across it like a gravestone. Gone. No note. No thanks. No return. It wasn't about the object. Not really. It was the silence around it. The disappearance without acknowledgement. And I realized that was the real bracelet. The invisible thread between generations of women who gave and gave and gave, and vanished quietly afterward. She wore it in the photo, probably without knowing its history, or maybe knowing, and not caring. The weight of it, the stories in it, didn't matter to her. She wore it as decoration. I had mailed it with trembling hands. She wore it like a trend. I sat down on the bed, the early light spilling across the comforter in streaks. I traced the edge of the fabric with my fingers, as if the answers were stitched into the seams. I remembered the day my mother gave me that bracelet. I was 19. Sitting at the edge of her bed after her funeral, my aunt handed it to me with quiet ceremony. She wanted you to have this, she'd said. She always said you were the one who understood. Understood what? I never asked. Now I think I know. That sometimes women don't pass down jewelry. They pass down endurance. I remember wearing it once, to a dinner where your father barely looked at me. I remember how the gold caught the candlelight, how I held my wrist up like a signal. But no one noticed. That's the thing about heirlooms. They don't carry magic. Just memories. And sometimes, memories no one wants. I thought about calling Jason. Not to accuse. Not to demand it back. Just to say, do you even know what you gave away? But I didn't. Because I already knew the answer. He didn't think he gave anything away. He thought he accepted a gift. A free offering. With no strings. And maybe that's how he saw me too. A giver. Not a person. That week, I cleared out my closet. One dress at a time. Not out of spite. I didn't throw anything away. I folded things carefully. Placed them into boxes. Labeled them for charity. Some of them still smelled like him. Like baby powder. Like the vanilla lotion he spilled when he was 6. Like the grass stains from his soccer games. I didn't cry. I just folded. I found an old voicemail from him too, hidden between robocalls and pharmacy reminders. Hey mom, just checking in. Everything's good. Love you. It was dated 2 years ago. I played it 3 times. Then deleted it. Not because I was angry. Because it hurt more to pretend it still meant something. I baked a pie the following Sunday. Blueberry. His favorite. Out of habit, I set out 2 plates. Then I put one away. The other I ate alone slowly. Each bite a small ceremony. Each crumb a quiet goodbye. The bracelet never came back. Of course it didn't. That's not how this works. Things don't return. People don't apologize. They move on. They forget the texture of your love. They replace it with convenience, with newer memories, with edited histories. I stood by the mailbox for a long time that week, looking down the street, hoping for nothing, expecting less. And that's when I knew I had reached the middle of the unraveling. Not the dramatic part, not the yelling or the confrontation, just the slow fade, the gray between love and forgetting. I pictured her slipping the bracelet off at night, tossing it on a dresser, not knowing that inside that curve of gold lived 3 generations of women who never raised their voices, who never asked for anything back, who disappeared quietly into their usefulness. And I decided something. I would not disappear that way. Not in pieces. Not without choosing. I began writing letters that week. Not to Jason. Not to her. To myself. Letters from the version of me who had been forgotten. Writing to the version of me who would not forget herself again. The first letter began. You are still here. You are not an afterthought. You are not a bracelet someone forgot to return. You are the hand that once held the family together. You are the keeper of warmth. You are allowed to leave without noise. And still be heard. I folded that letter into a drawer, next to the velvet pouch that no longer held gold, but now held my voice. It was supposed to be my olive branch, the one I always extended, even when the tree was burning. Jason had just moved into the new house, the one I helped make possible. I hadn't seen it. I hadn't been invited, but I heard about the housewarming party through his cousin's Instagram post. Blurry balloons, charcuterie boards, strangers who now filled spaces where I used to fit. So I did what I've always done. I cooked chicken and mushroom casserole, the one he used to ask for on his birthday when he was little. I could eat the whole tray, Mom, he'd say, mouthful, back when I was still someone whose food meant home. I made it that afternoon, folded the edges of the foil just right, placed it in the only dish I trusted, the cream-colored ceramic one with the chipped handle. I slipped a note under the lid. Nothing dramatic. Just my handwriting, soft and simple. Hope it still tastes like comfort. Love, Mom. I left it on his doorstep. Didn't ring the bell. Didn't wait around. Just placed it down like an offering at a temple, where I no longer worshipped. Days passed. Then a week. No text. No call. No thank you. And then 10 days later, a knock at the door. It was the dish. Left there. No note. No words. The foil was peeled back and loosely refolded, like someone had grabbed a second helping in a hurry. The casserole was gone, but so was the lid. And the inside of the dish, it hadn't been washed. Bits of baked-on sauce crusted along the corners. A dried noodle stuck to the side. I stood there holding it, the way you hold a baby you're afraid of waking. Not because I was angry, because it felt like a message. Not a loud one. A quiet kind. The kind that says, we ate what you gave, but we don't need anything else from you. I walked it to the sink. Turned the water on warm. Not hot. I couldn't bear to scald it. I scrubbed slowly. That dish had fed him after soccer games, after surgeries, after bad breakups. Now it was just dirty. Returned like borrowed Tupperware from an office lunch. I dried it carefully. Placed it back on the shelf. But I noticed something that hadn't been there before. A small crack running along the bottom. Barely visible. A hairline fracture. Isn't that always how it starts? One thin split. Then another. Until the whole thing can't hold heat anymore. That night, I sat in the kitchen with the lights dimmed, the way I do when the house feels too loud in its silence. And I thought about how many things I've given that were never given back with care. Not just the dish. Not just the bracelet. But the years. The rides to school. The hand-sewn Halloween costumes. The late-night talks after he didn't get into college the first time. The dinners where I smiled while others took the credit. The time I listened to him cry about the woman he now calls his wife. And said nothing when he forgave her for what he never forgave me for. There was once a time I believed motherhood was sacred. Now I wonder if it's just a series of unreturned dishes. That week I made a list. Not a bucket list. Not a to-do. A no more list. No more unacknowledged offerings. No more food deliveries to people who won't break bread with me. No more setting places at tables where I'm not seated. No more gifts to ghosts. I folded it and tucked it into the casserole dish. Like a note to the next version of me. If I ever try to give again, remind me. Not to stop loving, but to stop handing it over to those who've shown me what they'll do with it. By then, The crack in the dish had deepened. I ran my thumb across it. It felt like a vein. A reminder that even objects have breaking points. I considered throwing it away. But no. I kept it. As a reminder. Not of pain. But of boundary. That dish now lives on the top shelf. Too high to reach without a step stool. Too fragile to use. Too precious to discard. Like the part of me that still loves him. From a distance. I haven't cooked that casserole since. But I still keep the ingredients stocked. Just in case one day, I want to make it for myself. It was a Tuesday morning when the pain started. A soft pinch under my ribs, like someone tapping from the inside. By noon it was sharper, deeper, like something had shifted out of place and wasn't willing to return. I didn't call anyone. I drove myself. Parked crooked outside the ER. Sat with the engine running for a moment longer than I needed to. Because there was a voice in me that whispered, if this is the end, who would come? They admitted me. Tests. Needles. Fluids. Cold stethoscopes and colder hands. A nurse named Dana who smiled like she meant it. They gave me a room with a window. 5th floor. I stared at a rooftop vent across the way for hours. It spun slowly, like time, when no one's waiting on you. By the next morning, they confirmed it was my gallbladder. Infected. Inflamed. Not life-threatening, but not nothing. I texted Jason. Me. At St. Catherine's. They're keeping me for a few days. Just wanted you to know. The 3 dots appeared. Then vanished. Then silence. I stared at the screen until the battery died. The nurse came in with lunch. Turkey, mashed potatoes, orange jello in a plastic cup. Anyone coming to visit? She asked, almost gently. I shook my head and smiled. As if it were my choice. I wanted to say, no. But thank you for asking. That evening, I watched the sunset alone. Orange light spilling across a tray table that held a get well card from the hospital chaplain, addressed to our patient. I counted the tiles on the ceiling. Imagined what it would be like to have someone sit beside me. Not talk. Just sit. At 2 a.m., a code blue went off down the hall. Feet pounding, machines beeping, a life either leaving or returning. I closed my eyes and listened like it was music. And I thought, if I died right now, the first person to know would be the nurse on shift. Not my son. Not the woman who married into my bloodline. Not the people I once fed, clothed, protected. Just Dana, and maybe the chaplain. Maybe. The next morning, I unplugged myself. I waited until rounds were done, then peeled the tape from my arm, and eased out of bed. Folded the gown. Dressed myself. No fanfare. No discharge paperwork. Just a woman walking herself out the way she came in. The nurse at the desk asked, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yes. No one's coming." She nodded like she understood something deeper than my words. Before I left, I stood in the doorway and looked back at the empty bed. I imagined someone else in it. Someone whose phone buzzed every hour, who had flowers piling up on the windowsill, who had grandchildren asking when Nana was coming home. Then I shut the door. Outside, the air smelled like rain on hot pavement. I breathed it in like something sacred. I drove home slowly, parked properly this time. Walked into my house, turned the key in the lock like it mattered. Inside, everything was just as I left it. Quiet. Still. Waiting. The blanket on the couch still smelled like me. The framed photo of Jason on his 16th birthday still sat near the window. The one where he's smiling beside the first car I helped him buy. I stared at that photo. And whispered, I was there. It sounded strange in the room. The words, I mean. Like I was reminding the walls. Or myself. I boiled water. Made tea. Sat in silence. Not because I had no one to call. But because I was done calling. They say hospitals are places of healing. But for me it was a final rehearsal. A trial run for absence. And it taught me something no family gathering ever did. I can survive being invisible. But I don't have to keep returning to places that pretend not to see me. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Not because the pain was gone, but because the pretending was. I woke up that morning with no expectations. That's what I told myself anyway. I put the kettle on. Fed the cat. Washed the single plate in the sink. It was my birthday. 66. I didn't write it on the calendar this year. Didn't drop hints. Didn't remind anyone. Not that I had, in the years before. But still some small part of me, the foolish, childlike part, hoped that maybe this would be the year he remembered. Maybe she would hand him the phone and say, "Call your mother." Maybe someone would think of me not as an obligation, but as a person who had once mattered. The hours passed. 8 a.m. 9:30. No text. No call. I tried to distract myself. Took a walk to the corner store. Bought a single lemon and a jar of raspberry jam. Chose the lemon carefully like I was making a cake, even though I wasn't. Back home, I sat on the porch for a while. Watched the neighborhood children ride their bikes up and down the street, their laughter echoing off the sidewalks. A little girl fell. Scraped her knee. Her mother ran out, scooped her up, kissed the wound before even checking it. I remembered doing that. With Jason. So many times I lost count. He used to bring me dandelions, fistfuls of them, as if they were rare orchids. He once told his first-grade teacher I was a superhero in slippers. And now he couldn't spare 60 seconds. By noon, the ache in my chest had shifted. It wasn't sharp. Not anymore. Just dull. Heavy. Familiar. I decided to bake a pie. Peach from a can but still sweet. The kind Jason used to love. As it baked, the house smelled like the past. Warm. Safe. Belonging. I set the table for one, but poured 2 cups of tea. Out of habit. Or memory. Or madness, I'm not sure. I ate slowly. Each bite was like swallowing something I no longer had the stomach for. Afterward, I opened the drawer in the hallway, the one that held old cards. There it was. A birthday card from 5 years ago. Front. To the best mom in the world. Inside. Thanks for everything. Love, Jay. I held it in my lap, ran my thumb over the ink like it was Braille. Felt the indent where his pen had pressed too hard. He must have been in a hurry when he wrote it. Still he wrote it. I don't know what changed after that year. Was it the remarriage? The move? Or did I just stop being needed? That's the cruel part of motherhood no one warns you about. You raise them to fly, and when they do, you're supposed to feel proud. But what they don't tell you is that sometimes, they never look back. Not even to wave. That evening, I sat by the window. The sky turned the same soft lavender it had the day I brought him home from the hospital. He was so tiny. He held my finger like it was the whole world. I remember thinking, he will never let go. But he did. And I let him. That was the deal, wasn't it? We let them go. And they decide if they return. At 7:42 p.m., I checked my phone one last time. No missed calls. No voicemails. No message that said, "Sorry I'm late, but I remembered." Just the blank screen. I put the phone face down. Turned off the porch light. Folded the cardigan I had worn, the one with the soft blue buttons he used to play with as a toddler. And I whispered, "Happy birthday." Not to myself, but to the woman I used to be. The one who believed in forever bonds. The one who thought love was loud and visible. The one who used to cry when forgotten. She wasn't here anymore. She left quietly, the way all things leave when they are no longer invited. That night, I fell asleep without checking the phone again. I dreamt of nothing. And maybe that was the gift. A silence that no longer begged for noise.